An apple for the monkey. Part 1. Best friends. Westbury is a small village. It has 50 houses and one shop. It is also near a big zoo. A lot of people go there. They come from London in their cars. We live in Westbury. My mother is the shopkeeper there. I can walk to the zoo in 5 minutes. People from Westbury do not pay. I go every day. I like all the animals, but I always go to one cage. Hello, Simon, shouts Mrs. Kipling. You again? Mrs. Kipling looks after the monkeys. She sees me every day, but she always says the same thing. Yes, me again, I always answer. How is Honey? Honey is a small and beautiful golden monkey. She is honey brown and she has a long tail. She has quick, clever eyes. She is sometimes naughty and she likes to eat a lot of food. She is very greedy. But we are very good friends. Sometimes I helped Mrs. Kipling before the zoo opens. I clean Honey's cage. She always makes a hello noise and she jumps on my shoulder. Mrs. Kipling laughs. You're her friend, Simon, she says. She likes you best. But you did save her. Mrs. Kipling is right. I saved Honey and we are best friends. But Honey saved me too. This is our story. Part 2. The Teen Man. It was 2 years ago. It was the summer holiday. Mary was with us for 5 weeks. Mary is the daughter of my mother's sister. She's my cousin. I like Mary. We have birthdays on the same day. But I am 2 years older than her. I look after her. Sometimes she's braver than me. We went to the zoo a lot that summer. We had rides on the elephants. We looked at snakes asleep behind the glass. We have food to the animals. Mary liked the zoo. It was a good summer. We always went to Honey's cage. Honey and I were good friends already. Mary liked her too. Look at that man, said Mary one day. What man? The tall, thin man. There. He is wearing green trousers. Yes. He was here yesterday, said Mary. He was here, looking at Honey. He is here every day. Mary was right. He was there on Monday. He was there on Tuesday and on Wednesday. He was there every day. We stood in front of Honey's cage and watched him. He was tall and very thin. His hair was black and his eyes were dark brown. They were the eyes of a snake. Every day he stood in front of the cage. Every day he watched Honey with his snake's eyes. One day he stood next to us. You come here every day, he said to us. Do you like this monkey? Yes, we do, I said. What does it eat? Fruit, I answered. Fruit? Can it eat nuts? No, she cannot eat nuts, I said. Why not? She's a golden monkey, I said. She eats fruit and leaves. Mrs. Kipling is very careful. There's not many golden monkeys. There are only 3 in zoos. If they eat the wrong food, they are sick. Who is Mrs. Kipling? Asked the thin man. She is the keeper, I said. She looks after the monkeys. The thin man did not speak. She looked at Honey for a minute. What food does she like best? He said. Apples, I answered. She likes red apples. Monkeys do not eat apples, he said. They do. Watch. I had some pieces of apple in a paper bag. I showed a piece to Honey. Come here, Honey. Good girl. Look, a piece of red apple. Honey jumped down from the tree and ran across the cage. I gave her the apple. She sat on her tree and ate it. Give me that apple, said the thin man. She showed a piece to Honey. His hand was thin and white. There were 2 big rings on his fingers. Come here, little monkey, he said. Honey ran across the cage again. Good, he whispered. A greedy little monkey. Then he smiled with his thin lips. I can see that smile now. It was the smile of a snake before it is going to kill. Thank you, he said. Part 3. Some red apples. I saw the thin man again the next day, but not in the zoo. It was after lunch. Mary and I were in the room behind the shop. We heard the shop door open. Good afternoon, said my mother. Can I help you? Yes, said someone in the shop. I want some apples. These are good, said my mother. Look. No, I want some red apples. There are some red apples under the table. There, said my mother. But they're not ripe. These green apples are better. Simon, it is that man, whispered Mary. I knelt and pushed the door. I was very careful. It opened 10 centimeters and I saw him. It was the thin man. He was in our shop. No, he said to my mother. Those are no good. I want red apples. My mother put some red apples in a bag. Thank you, said the thin man. He did not smile. The next day we were at the zoo at 9 o'clock. Something was wrong. Honey looked at the apple in my hand, but she did not take it. She was not happy. I went to the zoo again in the afternoon. Honey was asleep in the corner of her cage. Come here, Honey, I said. Come and say hello. She heard me and she opened one eye. Then she closed it again. She is sick, said Mrs. Kipling. What's wrong? I said. Is it a cold? No, she's not eating, said Mrs. Kipling. It's worse than a cold. The next day, Honey's cage was empty. There was a notice on her Cage. Golden monkey, age 2 years, name Honey. This animal is in the zoo hospital. Part 4. No entry. I looked at the notice. Honey was sick. She was in the zoo hospital. What are we going to do? Said Mary. Mrs. Kipling is not here. We can go to the hospital, I answered. The zoo hospital is behind a high wall and tall trees. There is a notice on the gate. Westbury Zoo Hospital. No entry. No entry, I said. We cannot go in. Mary pushed the gate. It opened. She looked at me. Okay, come on, I said. We walked along a wide path on the hospital. It was a long, wide building. One door had the word office on it. We knocked and the door opened. What are you doing here? Said a big man with a black bird. We want to see Honey, I said. She's a sick monkey. Can we see her? No, you cannot see her, he said. This is the zoo hospital. There is a notice on the gate. It says no entry. Oh, yes, said Mary, but Honey is our friend. Go away, said the man with the bird. Now. She shouted the word now and closed the door. Mary and I walked to the gate. We were very sad. We kicked stones along the path, but we did not say anything. In the afternoon, we saw Mrs. Kipling. We told her about the man with the bird. That was George Stone, she said. He is big and he has a bird. He is new. He shouted, "Go away," said Mary. I know, said Mrs. Kipling. All the people in the hospital are tired and unhappy. But no more questions, said Mrs. Kipling. Sit on the wall and listen. We looked at Mrs. Kipling. Her clothes were dirty and her eyes were dark and tired. Honey is not in the zoo hospital, she said. She escaped this morning. Escaped? I said. She was sick. Yes, I know, answered Mrs. Kipling. But she ran out of her cage and out of the hospital. George Stone saw her. They are looking for her now in the trees and bushes behind the hospital. Mrs. Kipling put her hand on my head. Don't cry, she said. It's difficult, but we are going to find her. Part 5. The Blue Car. They watched near the hospital. They watched inside the zoo and they watched outside the zoo. They went to Westbury village. They did not find Honey. She is hiding, I said to Mary. She does not know these people. They frighten her. We can find her. We are her friends. Where are we going to look? Said Mary. Behind the hospital, I said. There are lots of trees there. It's good for a monkey. It was a hot day. There were no clouds. We climbed the wall at the side of the hospital. Then we were under the trees. We were very careful. We made no noise. We looked at every tree and under every bush. We saw a lot of birds, but we did not see honey. Then the trees stopped. There was grass and a small car park. We were near a door at the back of the hospital. Listen, said Mary, a car. We went nearer and knelt behind a tree. A blue car stopped in the car park. It was a big new car. The door opened. It is him, I whispered. It is the Thin Man. What is he doing here? The door at the back of the hospital opened. George Stone came out and walked across the car park. He stood in the middle with the Thin Man. They talked and laughed. They were friends. What are they saying? Said Mary. I do not know. I cannot hear, I said. Come on. I'm going to listen. We can hide behind the car. We were quick and careful. They didn't see us. We sat behind the big blue car and listened. We heard one thing. It was the Thin Man. We are going to have a lot of money, he said. George Stone laughed. Then they went into the hospital and closed the door. We looked through the windows of the car. There was a paper bag and a small black case on the seat. Look, I said. The door is open. Mary and I climbed into the car. We looked at the paper bag. It was from my mother's shop. Inside it, there were 4 red apples. Then we opened the case. There were some papers in it and a small white packet. Wash the hospital, I said to Mary. I opened the packet. There was some white powder inside. Some of the powder fell on the seat. What is it, Simon? Mary said. Don't touch it, I said. Why not? She asked. Then we heard someone walking across the car park. It was the Thin Man. Down, I whispered to Mary. Lie down on the floor. The Thin Man sat down on the front seat. He closed the door and he started the car. Part 6. In the dark room. The car went along some big roads. It was fast and quiet. There was a telephone in the car. The Thin Man used it. There was no answer. He turned on the radio. He didn't see us. Then there were stones on the road and the car went up and down. We were on a small road. Leaves touched the windows. There was no sun. It was dark on the floor of the car. The car stopped. We were outside a tall house. The Thin Man went inside the house and he closed the door. Mary and I jumped out of the car. Quick, I said. Before he comes back, we can hide at the side of the house. There are a lot of trees there. It was an old house. It had a lot of rooms. The grass was long in the garden. The windows were dirty. The trees at the side of the house touched the wall. It was dark under the trees, but hot. There was a smell of green leaves. Look, I said. There's a window at the side of the house. We can look inside. But the window was very high. I stood on my toes, but it was no good. Then I saw an old chair. We put it under the window and I climbed up. What can you see? Said Mary. It's difficult, I said. It's dark in there. I can see the walls. It's a small room. Nobody lives here. I can see an old table. I can see a bucket. And there is a box. No, it's not a box, Mary. It's a cage. Quick, come on and look. Mary climbed up. We looked and looked into the dark room. We did not say anything. Then Mary looked at me and she smiled. It was Honey. She was asleep in a cage in that small dark room. But why? Said Mary. The thin man is a thief, I said. He wants honey. Somebody is going to give him a lot of money. I thought hard. The apples, the powder. Yes, the powder and Georgetown. I know, Mary, I said. The thin man put the powder on the red apples. Honey always eats red apples. The powder made Honey sick. Then she went to the hospital. Georgetown is the thin man's friend. He is helping him. He works in the hospital. He said Honey escaped, but she didn't. What can we do? Said Mary. Listen, I'm going to watch here. You find Mrs. Kipling. She can get the police. Quick, run! Part 7. An apple for the monkey. I watched and waited. The sun was hot and there was no wind. It was hot and I wanted a drink. I climbed on the chair and looked into the room. Hannah was asleep. She was a very small monkey. I thought about her in the zoo. I thought about Mrs. Kipling. I thought about the thin man. And I waited. The police didn't come. I climbed on the chair again and looked into the dark room. Honey was not asleep now. Honey, I whispered, and my lips touched the dirty window. I cannot help you. The window is closed. The door of Honey's room opened. It was the thin man. He turned on the light. I jumped down. I waited under the window. It opened. It's hot, the thin man said. It's a hot day, little monkey. Here's some water for you. I don't want a sick monkey. He turned off the light and he went out of the room. But the window was open. Then I heard the front door open. I went nearer and looked. The thin man was in the car now. He was talking on the telephone. I didn't hear all the words. The monkey is here, he said. Has he got the money? All the money. Okay, I can put the cage in the car now. No, the monkey is not sick. Yes, yes, George knows. He put the telephone down. He took the case from the back seat. Then he took a red apple from the back. I went to the side of the house and climbed on the chair. I was quick and quiet. I climbed through the window. It was difficult. The window was high and I caught my leg on the wall. I fell into the room. "Come on, honey," I whispered. "We are going to escape." Honey knew me. She made her hello noise and jumped up and down in the cage. "Be quiet," I said, but it was no good. I opened the door of the cage and her hello noise was louder. She jumped on the table and the bucket fell down. There was a very loud noise. The door of the room opened. The Tin Man stood there. In his left hand was the apple. He looked at me with a snake's eyes. I looked at the two big rings on his thin fingers. Honey was on the table. He didn't see her. She looked at the apple. It was red. She liked red apples. She jumped. "Help!" shouted the Tin Man. He knocked his head on the wall and he fell down. "Come on," I shouted to Honey. "We can go through the house." She jumped on my shoulder and we ran. Outside there were two white cars. It was the police with Mary and Mrs. Kipling. "The Tin Man is in there," I said. Four policemen went into the house. Mrs. Kipling and Mary smiled and they cried too. I smiled with them. Then my face was wet too. "I'm crying," I said, "but I am happy." "You're a brave boy, Simon," said Mrs. Kipling. "And Honey is a brave monkey," said Mary. We laughed. Honey made a hello noise and she jumped up and down on my shoulder. She was very careful. She had the red apple in two hands.